this song. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Well, oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. I heard the old people sing, I'll never forget him. I'll never forget him. I'll never forget him, because he first loved me. Well, it's oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me before I could ever love myself, because he first loved me. Oh, because he first loved me. Oh, yes, how I love Jesus. I love him, I love him, I love him, I love him. Oh, how I love the Son of God. I love Jesus. Oh, how I don't you love Jesus? I love him because he first loved me. Oh, I love Jesus.
Peace be unto you, sisters and brothers. I greet you today in the name that is common among us, Jesus the Christ, and welcome you to this noon hour study of the sacred scriptures and a postscript reflection, if you will, upon the last 4 weeks of dialogue that I shared with Pastor John Tanner of the Cove Church here in Huntsville. Since Pastor Tanner and I have dialogued together, I have pondered with deep thought and reflection upon all that we have shared, and truly reflecting upon the salient points that linger with me, that call us in for a more focused attention, more focused spotlight. And today, what I really want to do is lift up some points based upon where we are in the national dialogue, and where we are in this moment of awakening and reckoning along the lines of racial injustice, seeking racial justice and equity, and ways that communities of faith, both white and black, are trying to forge a path forward. One of the things that still resonates strongly and deeply within me, shared by Pastor Tanner, I think came around week 2, and then we talked about it even more in week 3, that there is this incomplete discipling within the white evangelical church in America that ultimately has distorted the image of Jesus, not just as an historical figure, but also as the Christ of faith. And that's both a profoundly shocking statement and an honest admission. It's both shocking as a statement, but then honest and truthful as an admission that we've been seeing false images of the Christ in public domain, and that's beyond the images that people have on church fans, or that may be in stained glass windows, or could even be a portrait hanging in your homes. But it's a profoundly shocking statement because it calls into question the integrity of the faith that's being passed on to other generations. And in the times in which we're living, we're discovering more and more that faulty and false image is captivating the attention and the imagination of so many people who are passionate and who are vocal and even vociferous in the ways they defend their faith. And their passions and their adamant defense and advocacy of that faith causes them to defend the status quo as if they are doing God's bidding, right? And that is it's deeply problematic theologically, and it's deeply inaccurate when you consider the witness of Jesus that we find in the New Testament scriptures. In essence, these false images present Jesus as an American patriot. This gun-toting, Confederate flag-waving white male, right? This is how it's presenting him. It's as if Jesus is American, he's patriot, he's got his gun, he's got his flag, and he's enjoying his privilege. And the reason that so many have become comfortable with such a distorted image is because that image essentially conforms to the cultural idolatry of the land. This is important, right? It's a cultural idolatry, and when we see and think of idolatry, typically we think of some statue somewhere, some physical representation of one who is posing or is to be revered or venerated as deity. But this kind of cultural idolatry is quite subtle in American life, and because it is subtle, it makes it even more sinister because it's under the radar, it's under the surface, and without removing the cover to see exactly what it is, you could be duped into believing that it's real, but it's only a reinforcement of the kind of structure that is intended to keep in place everything that stands against the Christ, right? Now, I'm not speaking in exaggerated terms. I'm not speaking hyperbolically. I'm trying to accurately describe what I'm seeing in the land, particularly as the occupant of the White House has become so aligned with a strand of American Christianity that if I could use the way the late Vincent Harding, who was a religion scholar, talked about it, it's a strange mutation of the religion of Jesus, right? This is a strange mutation of the religion of Jesus that brings to us this kind of fervor and this rhetoric that is quite dismissive. Now, this requires us to do at least one thing. It's open the book for ourselves and encounter Jesus through the pages of Scripture, in the witness of the Gospels, in the testimony of those who experienced him themselves historically, in the witness of the epistles, who continue to testify about the efficacy of his life and his ministry, and who have been encouraging and upholding the witness of the early saints who were followers of the way, disciples of him, and then who at Antioch were branded with the moniker Christians, right? It requires us to take the witness seriously, and it requires us to then go beyond the superficial encounters that we have had before and the superficial encounters that are being presented to us regularly in the public discourse. So I say this because there are people in our day who are suggesting somehow that their religion, their experience of Christianity is being attacked, being maligned by forces that have anti-Christian agenda. But what I really want us to cut through all of that stuff and realize is that Christianity in America is really not the marginal religion, right? It has its own dominance, and we have to be careful that we don't let people whose political agenda, hear me, political agenda masquerade as some authentic spirituality. All right, this is important. And it's important for several reasons, not just because we have an election in about 2 months, not just because we're facing a moment of thick tension and profound moral ambiguity, but because there comes these moments, these times when the witness here, listen, the witness of those who are anti-Christ, right? And one of the things that Pastor Tanner helped us with that's important is that you don't take this fundamentalist approach, particularly when you get to the book of Revelations around the Antichrist and thinking that it's just a person. No. The Antichrist is anything that is anti-Christ, right? Don't think in these narrow and provincial terms that doesn't help us realize what's taking place. The spirit of the Antichrist is roaming to and fro publicly before our eyes. And don't let anyone tell you you don't see what you see, or that you do not hear what you hear. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Your ears are not deceiving you. Perhaps you're shocked that it's as plain as day, but that's not the same as these things don't exist or that they are not real. So these superficial kinds of images that we've seen, distorted images that cast Jesus in ways that make, not I wouldn't say us, but that make people of the dominant culture feel secure and in comfort. Those images never truly challenge their assumptions that they are supposed to be in charge, right? I don't want to speak just abstractly about it. I want to be concrete so that we see it, right? Because the same folks who are presenting us the distorted images of Jesus are championing this cause of law and order, right? Let's put it, and don't be deceived. You know, this law and order talk ain't nothing but a crackdown on black and brown folks. That's exactly what it is. Because if the concern was for law and order, they would first start looking in the administration itself that has been the most lawless administration of modern times. If there was any concern about law and order, you look right there in the administration. You'd look right there in the campaign. Whose campaign has had more persons go to jail? So if we're talking law and order by definition, let's start looking at the ones who are talking. But because the same people then who like the distorted image of Jesus also appreciate the law and order conversation, because it secures what they enjoy, right? And the more comfortable that we become with the security we enjoy, the less we are to listen to the voices who do not enjoy the same comforts, and the more prone we will be to using whatever is at our disposal to ensure that the marginalized people don't get to speak up to challenge the comfort and the security we enjoy. This is, you want evidence. Okay, I just preached on Sunday from Acts chapter 5. On the first Sunday in August, I preached from Acts chapter 4. And both the scene of Peter and John in front of the council in Jerusalem, and then Peter and other apostles who are unnamed, those two encounters were really, if you read it closely and carefully, those encounters were really questions of power, right? You recall what Peter and John were asked in chapter 4. By what name and what power are you preaching? By what name and what power are you going to heal a man who was lame at the gate? This is the question. By what name and what power? Because ultimately, the power establishment, i.e. the council, they had the license from the state, Rome, to control their own people. And they were given authority through the temple police, right, of whom they had a captain of the temple guard who was second only to the high priest, right, to levy taxes on the people who would come to participate in the sacrificial system of temple life, to regulate the people. So here is a political accommodation that Rome gives to some religious leaders. Keep your people in check, and we will let you enjoy, a pretty comfortable life. This is the deal, right? We'll let you enjoy some comfortable life. Now, I want you to see it. It's politically expedient for Rome to let some of the Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees run some things to keep everyone in line. And then it's expedient for the council to put down any insurrectionist, any radical, any revolutionary that would come up and do anything that would be perceived to be usurping the authority of the council itself, or really the work, what they saw to be the dominance of the state, Rome. This is important because people who like pretending that Jesus was apolitical are really trying to deceive you, right? We're living in serious times, y'all. And we can no longer pretend, listen, this is important. We can't pretend any longer that we are in love with the same Jesus. We can't pretend we love the same Jesus if their Jesus is okay with the violence being brought upon our bodies. Come on now. Talk to me, y'all. Don't, right? We cannot pretend like it's the same. Because the Jesus we get in the New Testament, his witness and his life and his ministry is seen being identified with those not in power, but with those who have no power. Okay? This is important. Who has no power. They have no power. And here's why it's important. And this is what you ought to read. I want you to go back and read the infancy narrative in the Gospel of Luke, particularly the Gospel of Luke. Read how Jesus comes into the world, right? Not an entrance of kingly estate, no royal fanfare, no edict from Rome, no announcement throughout that give you a sense that Jesus comes to be with the powerful, the high, and the mighty. As a matter of fact, the first ones to bear witness to the fact that God in Jesus is born in a humble place where they feed animals were not the people of the council, right? But were some people who were out in the fields, right? Shepherds. Now we sing about this. We sing about this at Christmas. We sing about while shepherds kept their watching or silent flocks by night, right? We sing about that in that hymn, Go Tell It on the Mountain. But I need you to understand what is really taking place. It's God making entrance and sharing the good news with people who would ordinarily be the last ones to hear about it. Even before the shepherds, listen to what happens when the angel comes and tells Mary about what's going to take place. And we hear about it in what we call the Magnificat, where she sings and extols God for what is the great reversal of the social order. The great reversal of the social order. And the great reversal of the social order is essentially God doing a switch. If you're high, God is tearing you down to bring you low. If you're low, God is lifting you up so that you could be exalted. Now, and he doesn't do it so that the ones who are being exalted might rule over the ones who are being humbled. He's doing it so that those who were previously low and now exalted might bring about the justice of a new order, so that there would no longer be people who have to live in low estate. But the challenge has been people who have been raised, listen, often start taking on the ideology of people they have once overthrown and start thinking like that and living like that. And as a result, you have to go through these constant waves and cycles of God having to do it all over again in order to make and fashion us into what God wants us to be. So these superficial encounters
are no longer cutting it. Let me tell you why it's no longer cutting it. Because it's not even my generation. I am a millennial, but you've got Gen Z, right? You've got Gen Z and a new generation after them coming up who are looking at not just us, but the generations before us, and asking the question, why would I want to be Christian, listen, in a nation where Christian dominance only yields itself to white supremacy and racism? This is it. I gave you all that setup really to ask that question. And that question is my best way to restate a question that Howard Thurman really asks in the preface of his seminal text entitled Jesus and the Disinherited. The text comes out in 1949. Thurman is born the turn of the 20th century. He's reared in Daytona Beach, Florida, by his maternal grandmother, who had lived through the harrowing ordeal of American chattel slavery, and shared with him in his upbringing some of her disdain and loathing experiences and feelings about what was to be given to her through the preaching of Christian ministers, so-called Christian ministers, who attempted to make that insidious institution compatible with the intent of God. And that shapes his consciousness as Thurman would go sometime around 1919. He would enter Morehouse College, and he would have contemporaries in his class, such as Martin Luther King Sr., Daddy King. He would have contemporaries such as Benjamin Elijah Mays, Benny Mays, who would become later on president of Morehouse College, who had Franklin Frazier in his class. These are his compatriots with whom he is studying and wrestling with these difficult questions, trying to make sense and reconcile the harsh realities of race and racism with what they felt inherently and instinctively to be the liberating impulse of the gospel. And they're all there at Morehouse College wrestling with these issues. And John Hope is president of Morehouse College then, giving them kind of leadership with the faculty as they are wrestling with this. But Thurman's question in 1949, about 30 years after he's gone from out of school, is simply this, and this is a question that is still relevant today. And imagine, y'all, he asked this question in 1949. We are in 2020, right? And this question still lingers with us, right? Some 71 years later. Here's the question: why is it, and he's talking about Christianity in America, why is it that Christianity seems impotent to deal radically and therefore effectively with the issues of discrimination and injustice on the basis of race, religion, and national origin? This is what he asks. Why is it that Christianity seems impotent to deal radically and therefore effectively with the issues of discrimination and injustice on the basis of race, religion, and national origin? That's the question. And you can ask the question today, why is it? Right? Why is it? Why is it that we have not yet been able to deal effectively with this situation? And it seems that Thurman is getting at it a bit more in the next question that he raises. He asks, is this impotency due to a betrayal of the genius of the religion? Or is it due to a basic weakness in the religion itself? Now this is important. Is it due to the betrayal of the genius of the religion? Or is it due to a basic weakness in the religion itself? Now, let's parse this, because Thurman, in the book Jesus and the Disinherited, it's going to be one of our guides over the next few weeks as we're trying to really unpack this. And I've been putting together these scattered thoughts under this general theme of meeting Jesus again, or in parentheses I put, or maybe for the first time. All right? This is how I entitled this: Meeting Jesus Again. Then in parentheses I have, or maybe for the first time. Because I think there is something in what Thurman is asking that reveals to us that we may not, American Christianity, this strange mutation of the religion of Jesus, may not have met the Christ. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to and I'm not being cynical. I'm not being skeptical. I'm trying to provoke the response, because if this question is being raised 71 years ago, 71 years ago, 71 years later, it's still the pressing question. When William Edward Burghardt Du Bois came in the early 20th century, he spoke about the color line being the essential driving force of America in that century. And yet, 100 years later, it's still the same issue. It's still the same issue. It seems like we have not been able to ask this question because, in many respects, we don't want the Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ of faith. We want an Americanized Jesus. Right? And that Americanized Jesus is okay with you caging children at the southern border. This Americanized Jesus is okay with your travel ban on people from majority Muslim nations. Right? That Jesus is okay with what we see, where we take resources, listen now, meager resources you take from people who lost their jobs not because they didn't want to work, but because of a global health crisis, and you tell me that giving them that extra $600 is somehow offensive to you because it's not going to incentivize them to go back to work. Listen to how crazy it is. Listen to how crazy it is, the fact that we still live in the richest nation that would not secure a living wage for people who work, that would make unemployment be more attractive than giving them a living wage. This is how crazy it is. But the same people who say we're not going to do that are the people who make almost $200,000 a year in Congress, paid for by the taxpayers, and health care, and all of their staff expenses. And this is what Americanized Jesus is okay with. But for people who no longer find that Jesus compatible with the figure in the New Testament, for the people who as Thurman would say, who dare to break away from the wall, because this is the pronounced metaphor of his work in that text when he asks the question, what does the religion of Jesus have to say to those who find themselves at a moment in human history with their backs against the wall? The wall is the metaphor for the hard places that which we thrust people to live in. It's a metaphor for the margins where you give them no options, but you predetermine how they ought to respond based upon what is comfortable for you when you enjoy the power. Right? That when you dare to break away from the wall, and you dare to take on the challenge, and you confront it, when you dare speak for healing, and you dare speak for a kind of recreation of the social order, when you dare champion the cause of hope of those who are despairing, when you dare call into question the assumptions of the nation that's comfortable with things being the way they are, you too will be branded radical. And that's why we use that term, radical. Radical. It's radical to ask for children to have nutritious meals for their body. It's radical to ask that we distribute and apportion funding equitably. It's radical to ask for law enforcement not to indiscriminately shoot black people. It is radical. And yet, that is who we find skipping across the pages of the New Testament record. And so, if you want more than just a relationship that is predicated solely on the central orthodoxies of Christianity or of American Christianity, if you want a way to a more liberating spirituality, if you want to get to the inward center, the heart and soul of Jesus as he reveals to us the ultimate concerns of God for God's creation, you are gonna have to go beyond the distortions we have seen, the corruptions that we know, in order to be identified with wall-bruised people. Now they don't find themselves factoring and figuring with any prominence in our social structure. But they're there. And I'm realizing more and more that by ignoring them, you only compound the problem. Law and order is not going to solve this issue. It's got to be repentance and justice. Law and order is not going to deal adequately with what is the rage from many centers of the nation. People who've been forgotten and forsaken and been put upon and beat down and broken and intentionally left so that they could be the foundation upon which we build a comfortable life for only certain people. When you address what dysfunctions and inequities are at the margins, then you're doing the work of Jesus. But don't tell me about somebody who is only interested in my by and by without any care for my here and now. It just seems to be insulting that we should have to live through life with these obvious injustices, only longing and looking to go somewhere else and not have those issues addressed here. So I've been processing what Pastor Tanner and I have been talking about. I've been trying to put them into context, because over these next 60 days, y'all, the nation is really going to reveal itself. It's going to reveal whether we are authentic followers of the Christ, or whether we are beholden to that strange mutation of the religion of Jesus. And I'm very cautious and careful to examine my own practice of faith, to see whether it's more Western than it is Christian, more American than it is Christian. Because ultimately, you don't want the journey to end and you come to the scene as the scriptures describe, seeking entrance to a kingdom that is not yours, trying to hold up a track record that isn't true, telling a confession that is inauthentic, and to hear him say, I never knew you. So the hope is that before that scene, we'd get to know him for real and follow him for sure. God bless you.